Yo, what's up guys? Talking about dimensional hole energy. And dimensional energy, I think a lot of people are still farming like 2A's, more 2A's, skill ups for 2A's after they built all of the 2A's and then more 2A's and then more 2A's and then more 2A's. Let me tell you that you could farm something else in here as well, which is this thing. Or one of the other dungeons where you can actually get the runes. Or maybe through this thing that we have right now where you get like a good rune in one of those, it rolls pretty nice. You actually have to start farming the dimensional rate. And for that reason, I'm making this video because I feel like there's way too many people just mindlessly farming non-stop on getting all of the units, but never really thinking about farming these for actually getting anything good in there. I would say I haven't been doing this on my alt yet. I'm currently logged into my alt. I haven't been farming anything of runes or any of the dimensional rate on my alt. I also don't think it's the right point for it to do so. But then the question is, say, when is it the right? Well, it's kind of up to you. You could say like, okay, I just want a copy of all of the 2A's that are useful, which I will go over in about a second. And then after that, I'm just gonna go for farming on any of the dungeons, and I'll recommend you the dungeons later as well, which I recommend you to farm, but there's pretty much just one or two which I recommend you to farm. Third one is kind of optional, but we'll get to that in a second as well. So that's option one. You just get a copy of one of each of which are very useful, and afterwards you just start farming all of the runes. You could also say, I want to get multiple of them because maybe you're free to play, you don't want to spend devil mons into your units, and therefore you want to get multiple, and therefore you want to get skill. For that reason, I'm actually in this video going to go over all of the units, and then one by one, and then tell you if I would recommend to get copies from them or not. Well, let's just say, get them with skill ups, just get one, or don't care about this unit. Or let's say, don't care about this unit, or very optional. Those four tiers are in here right now. So let's just start at the beginning. After that, I will focus on, okay, let's say you're already done with all of those. What would you go into doing then for which dungeons? What would I recommend you to farm on and how to farm it? And how to farm it specifically, I might do in a future video, but let me know in the comments if you would want me to do like a beginner guide videos on like the stages on a 5. And before we start on all of these specific units, there's one very important thing that I think a lot of people are still missing out on. And that is, even on beginner accounts, it's not that hard to get. Get these buildings in, which are these two. And they actually increase your charge rate of your dimensional hole energy by 10%, which is very, very useful. Also keep in mind, why are you farming those runes there? The runes are better there because you have the ancient grinds. They have just a higher drop table rate. Wait, let me see. This, we can see the drops over here. You can see that normally the rates are for like 4 to 8 or 5 to 8 and something like that. With ancient runes, you have the chance of getting a way stronger rune than what you get from normal farming. However, to keep in mind, you can refresh dimensional hole energy. I think it is less useful right now than it used to be in the past. And the reason for that is that dimensional hole, like the farming of the runes specifically, they can still drop blue 5-star runes. So technically they would have to increase those drop rates because they have been increasing B12 to Abyss to even higher drop rates in Abyss. And the dimensional hole is still the same thing. So getting a legendary on that one with the right stats is pretty difficult. But if you happen to have a few runes already through either crafting or through one of like the monthly things, then the rates might be pretty interesting. But first of all, I'm going to explain you which of the 2A's I recommend you to get one of, and afterwards maybe get multiple off to skill up, or some that I maybe recommend you to not get at all. I'm just gonna go through each family, every element, and then switch to the next unit. Bulldozer I would classify as niche. Won't really say like he's not recommended to get, but he's just niche. He's used in siege offense, but he's no longer as great, so I don't really recommend to get him. Tractor I would say definitely get one, but afterwards getting the skill ups for him, you could get the skill ups, but I would say the skill ups for him are pretty optional, so it's not really a must. Tractor is one of those units he would even perform if he's just this Tractor, so it's not really a must to get like Tractor on skill ups, but you could get him skill ups if you use him a lot. Crane is just one of those niche units. It's kind of used if you have like a Laura or Widget back in the days, but this thing is not really used too much, wouldn't really get this one. Driller, I see some people use it on siege defense. If you're to use it on siege defense, you probably want to skill it up as well. But personally, on my main, I don't even have one, so I don't really care too much about this unit. So it's really depending on like, okay, if you want to use it, fully skill it up. If you don't use it, well, just don't get it. And then we have Crawler. Well, pretty much this one is just straight up useless. On to the next one. We start off with Iron. Iron is actually very useful to get if you want to farm dimensional raids, because this thing actually goes through shields and ignore all damage reduction effects. So that's definitely a useful one. If you want to pick up another unit for the dimensional raid, Iron is definitely very useful for that. But would I skill up this one? No, it's just a little bit of extra damage, but I wouldn't necessarily skill this one up. Same for Nickel. It is pretty useful if you want to use it for SF farming. No, wait, not for SF farming, for PC farming, so the Punisher script. But I would just get one and I wouldn't really skill this up. Copper, it kind of depends, like similar to Bulldozer. If you still use this regularly on Siege, it's not that bad of a unit, but it's also kind of hard counted in current meta because outspeeding is a lot more difficult. You don't have just too many teams that you can just go cleanly in with just killing 2 units and that kind of stuff. If you can, Copper is definitely nice, and I would definitely aim to get the skill up on the skill 3 if you tend to use it a lot, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend to get Copper. Silver, wouldn't recommend to get. Zinc, I would definitely recommend to get, and Zinc is also one of the best units for SF dungeons. And in SF dungeons, I would recommend this one to fully skill up as well. Mainly the skill 2 is the important one to skill up because that's a higher chance of buff blocking. So definitely get a Zinc and definitely skill that one up as well. Next up, we have the Grim Reaper, starting with Seth. It used to be very meta for clearing things. You can kind of still use it in Siege offense. You can kind of use it in TOA. But those are the only 2 things. It's not really a must get anymore at all. But if you get it, it's also not really a must to scale it up. But this one, I'm still not 100% sure if this activation rate actually goes up for the recovery or the continuous damage. I think it is only the recovery because the recovery is at 50. And then this is supposedly at 100 anyway. So I guess it's just adding in the recovery. So skill ups on him is not really that interesting. Amos, I've never seen anyone use this. Could be used Siege offense, but wouldn't really recommend to get it. There's better units out there for it. Same for this thing. Kind of similar for this thing. Could be used maybe here and there for niche things, but kind of same. This one is useful for TOA if you don't really have good TOA units, but I would also just get one and don't skill it up. Could also be used for Siege offense, of course. We have Rebecca, never seen being used, wouldn't get it. Megan, if you tend to use this quite a bit, I would get one, maybe skill it up with like just this. These 2 care a lot less. Celia, I made one just for some dungeon teams, never really worked out, so I wouldn't really recommend that one. Linda, it could be used for, like, people said that it's like a semi-Grogan kind of unit, but since we have the light tea bunny, black tea bunny, or whatever it's called right now, that has the cooltime increase, I think that her skill set is a little bit less interesting already. Plus, it is also too random of the 3 or the 4 hits, so if you want to use it, skill it up, but most likely no one's going to get it. This one is very strong for, I would say, Siege as well. People tend to use it a lot in 4-star arena or like 20-star arena, so it's definitely a usable unit if you don't have any other strippers. Besides that, it is also used in the fastest team for Steel Fortress, so you could definitely use it for there. If you want to use it for Steel Fortress, you probably do have to scale it up, otherwise just get one. Like, I would, if you tend to use it, I would scale it up, otherwise don't get it at all. Next up, we have Cayenne. Never really seen this unit being used all too much. Can skip on this one. Same for this one, not really being used too much. Royd is definitely a nice unit. It's very good for Siege. If you tend to use it a lot, I would scale it up because his damage increases by a decent amount. But you can use it without skill ups as well. It's not really like too big of a miss, but it is definitely recommended to skill it up. Darian, you could get one. Personally, I never got one. You could put it in like arena defense or some light tank, but there's better options out there. Jubel, kind of the same thing. You could use it as a dark tank in Siege, but there's better things out there as well. So these are not really recommended too much. Just the Royd that I would recommend to get at least one. Maybe get multiple. May is pretty nice against the Fuki meta that we had a little bit. Still pretty nice against a few units in Siege offense, but it's just Siege offense. And I guess you can get away without scaling it up. If you tend to use it a lot in Siege offense, I would scale it up mainly for this cooltime increase. But besides that, probably you can skip on May in the first place. Mina is also one of those. Used to be used quite some in a few places here and there, in like Siege offense and even in Special League RTAs. But I think in current stages you can kind of skip on this one as well. Naomi is definitely used in PvE stuff. But I would say besides R5, there's probably better units in every scenario because a lot of things are these simple things of like enemy max HP scaling things. So a shaman or something like that actually does tend to do more damage. So you could skip out on this one as well, but you could place it in for your R5. I don't really think the skill ups are that necessary on her though. Shaolin, don't really see people using her, so it's not that great. Miho, it could be a nice siege counter because of the passive in here. Skilling up, well, if she's used at the right team in siege, then she probably doesn't really need the skill ups, but it does make it more safe where she would actually be able to clear something. It's also not too bad for RTA if you face a team that you guarantee know, like, oh, this is a Vert and an Ethna and all of those kind of units that guaranteed crit, then she's pretty nice as a 5th pick, but she's not really a must. I would get one at least, but I wouldn't really skill it up. It's not really a must. Garochi, I didn't even know the name, and that probably says enough, like how often this unit is used. Nope. This one, Vigor, I would definitely get, and I would definitely skill it up. And the main reason for skill up is the cooltime increase and also the harmful effect. So this is one, if you get it, I would definitely recommend this one to be full skilled up because his skills actually increase in cooltime, harmful effects, those are the important things. And Vigor is very good for Siege. So Vigor is definitely recommended to get at least one of. If you care about Siege, you maybe get even more of those kind of units. Shakan, didn't even know the name. Asher definitely recommended to get. If you tend to use it more often, I would skill it up as well. And then we have Jilton. Jilton is definitely nice as a dark tank, but I would just get one and I would not skill it up. Like the skill ups on this one don't care too much. Mainly it's just tanking and his passive. Then we have Lala and Friends. I would say it's used from time to time, but personally I never needed one, so I wouldn't really recommend people to get it. Lulu is definitely used, and Lulu I would also recommend to skill up because the recovery increase is definitely something that's very beneficial if you tend to use Lulu a lot. But you could use Lulus without skill ups as well. It's not really a must, but if you use it a lot, I would recommend it to skill up. This one never used. This one is used sometimes, but I would recommend rather more Lulus than building any of those. Jaja and Friends is sometimes used as this dark tank kind of thing, and then also healing on like triple revenge. But I would say mainly just keep the Lulus and then maybe build like a few of those to get skill ups, or maybe even multiple Lulus with skill ups. But that is the real use for one of those. Then we go for the high elementals. Kali first. Kali I would definitely get, and Kali would also definitely get skill ups, and that's mainly for the damage on the S2. So Kali, very useful units also in PvE and a bunch of other stuff, but you definitely want to get the damage in on that S2. Elena, don't really see it too much. Kali is just so much better on that S3, so I wouldn't really get this one. Moira wouldn't get that one either. Shren is an option to get. It's definitely not a bad unit because of that recovery and then also having the tectonic shift. I would definitely skill it up if you tend to use it, but it's not really a must unit. You can kind of skip out on Shren. And Jumalain, I guess that's how you say it, is not really a recommended unit, so I wouldn't get this one. It can be niche here and there because it does have like the crit rate and that kind of stuff, but I don't think. For this one, Spectra, definitely recommended to get a Spectra and definitely recommended to skill up the Spectra, mainly because harmful effect increases and cooltime decreases. So Spectra 100% get one. You don't need more than one Spectra, but get it and then skill it up as well. Khan, wouldn't really recommend to get it. It has a few niche usage here and there, but I wouldn't really recommend to get a Khan. Bernard, you can get it if you tend to use Bernard a lot. You can use it for the skill ups in these. Keep in mind that you don't get like a 5% and then a 10%, so this becomes a 45%. That's not the case. You're going to get 15% of 30%. So that's going to be like, what, 4.5 or something. So it's going to be a speed boost or like an attack bar boost of 34.5 rather than a 30. So if you tend to use it, skill it up. If not, then just get one 2-8 and that's about it. Shaman is definitely used a lot. I would also definitely skill this one up mainly because of the cooltime increase. So Shaman is a very good of a unit the moment you get it. And Varus is niche, wouldn't really get one. It's just a niche unit, would skip out on this one. Then we go for the Inugamis. Rogue definitely is a get, definitely is a skill up one as well because you want to get that harmful effect for higher chances of defense breaking. You can get multiple Rogues because you can use some here and there in multiple stages for like PvE, but just getting one Rogue is mostly enough these days. Ikaru, I would definitely still get an Ikaru, but I wouldn't get 3 Ikarus, which used to be the meta back in the days. And you don't need to skill it up because there's no harmful effect increase on any of those. It's just the unit that doesn't do all too much damage. So definitely get an Ikaru, but just get one and don't skill it up. Ramahan, wouldn't skill up. Beladion I would get, but I probably wouldn't skill up. It's a very good unit, actually. It's actually a very, very legit unit. However, the thing is where he's not used as much. So early game, you're going to use it a lot, but getting a lot of the skill ups in, this thing also needs 6 skill ups, whereas some of the others need just 4 skill ups. So I wouldn't really skill up Beladion. And also the armor break, it's already 100%. It's just the decrease of the attack bar that gets added by 10%. So it's not really a must. Same for this thing, it's already 100%, and then the recovery a little bit increased is nice, but it's not really a must. Then we have Crow. Crow I would definitely recommend to skill up, once again increasing that armor break chance, but also definitely increasing the harmful effect rate on this skill. And then this skill also tends to do quite some damage. So I would definitely recommend, if you use Crow Pride Swan, which I think most people PvE related will do in R5, bunch of dungeons. So definitely do skill up your Crow. Then we have the Warbears. This one, very niche used. Wouldn't recommend to get. Wouldn't recommend to get. Wouldn't recommend to get. You could use this in Siege some here and there. If you get it for Siege, I wouldn't even skill it up, but you could get it. Wouldn't recommend to get unless you have a Yan Hong and a very specific team. Then this thing could be used with a Yan Hong. And this one also wouldn't recommend to get. Then we have the Pixies. Tattoo is no longer needed as well. Same thing as Seth. It used to be meta for some dungeon clearing. Currently, you don't really need it. Also, wouldn't recommend to get. Wouldn't recommend to get. Shannon you could do for your first Giants team. It's actually one of the units that is very strong for Giants because of attack buff, defense buff, glancing hits, slows, everything like that. It's a very solid all-round unit for that. So to get your first Giants team of Abyss Heart in, she's definitely nice. But I wouldn't skill her up. That's kind of a waste. Same don't get, wouldn't skill up. This one is used sometimes in Siege, or not necessarily, no wait, not in Siege, in RTA. In RTA for like cooltime increases on like a low star unit, but it's not really that great. Wouldn't really recommend to get that unless you specifically want to use it for RTA of cooltime increasing, but that's just pretty much Special League, 4-star League, that kind of stuff. Then we have the Fairies. Fire Fairy is definitely one of those Siege units of Siege offense. It's not really super great, but it's a decent stripper, can tend to do quite some damage on additional damage artifacts. If you're planning to use this, I would definitely scale it up because it's just higher of rates of strips and you're definitely gonna need this 20%. So if you tend to use it, I would scale it up. If not, you can definitely skip out on this one. It's just more PvP and Siege, and I would even say more RTA, but then 4-star and Special League RTA rather than actual normal RTA. Elucia is definitely a unit I recommend people to get, and it's also a unit I would recommend people to skill up, and then it's mainly for the skill 2. Skill 3 and skill 1 you don't need skill ups that much, so you can kind of skip out on it, but Elucia is definitely a unit that you want to get, maybe even get multiple of. I would say if you get multiple, maybe you don't have to skill up multiple, but definitely if you tend to use one a lot, the recovery is very useful. This thing not really used, this one not used, this one also not used. And that is everything for all of the 2A's. So those are the 2A's that I recommend you to use. There's quite a few that you actually want to skill up, so it will take you quite some time to get all of the skill ups of all of the units. But at some point you're also going to be at the time, especially where we have the, it's lowered in cost for how many dimensional hole energy you need on stage 5. Stage 5 is a lot easier to farm right now, so you pretty much need like a really shitty team and you already clear 5. I noticed on my alt, my alt can literally do this with a oak that is not ruined, so that's how easy it is to upgrade your units right now. And you only need, I think it's 87 runs to get a unit to full 2A. So it's pretty easy to get 2A's in right now. Sure, you have to wait the time, but the cool time is reduced right now because you also have those 2 towers that I showed at the start. So after you do all of that, that's the moment where you could be is like, okay, I want to farm these other dungeons. And what are the options for the other dungeons to farm? Well, I would say there's actually just 3 options. There's 2 more over here, but those 2 are pretty much just useless by the drop rates they have. The one that I would recommend most people to go to is either this one, which is going to give you Rage and Blade, and then Nemesis is on the side kind of used as well. If you're mainly PvE focused or you're mainly focused on just cleaving and that kind of stuff, then Rage Blade is definitely useful to go into the Forest of Roaring Beast. I think this one is also easier to farm than Elunia. Elunia is the one that I recommend most people to farm though, because Sanctum of Fairies gives the best drop table in my opinion, because that's Despair, that's Will, those 2 are very good, and then you have Nemesis, that's like a half one that's good, and then you have 2 useless sets. But this is like 2.5 useful. Some people argue for Lumen being useful. Lumen, I would say, is nice, because you have Will, but after Will, you just have like, this one is a half for me, this one is a half for me, and these one are not even counting. So this one counts for like 2 points for me, whereas Elunia counts for 2.5 points for me, in all honesty. So for that reason, I prefer to go for Elunia, and just farm Elunia, and definitely also farm this thing. This thing actually rotates, and you can see the schedule of that over here. But if you happen to get like a good rune from Karazhan, for example, that Rage rune, and it rolled very good, you want to grind it, then definitely check out when it's at Karazhan and then start farming these. I don't really have guides for it, for beginner guides to farm these kind of things. I'm not sure how easy it is. Sure, you're gonna spend like, I think you're first gonna spend probably like 4 or 5-ish months getting all your 2A's, getting the right skill ups. Was it 4 or 5 months? No, I think it's probably even less. Like probably 3 or 4 months, then you have all of the 2A's plus the skill ups that you want. And afterwards, I highly recommend to go into these dungeons and try to get either the grinds that you have for like the good runes that you got from mainly the things over here. And then afterwards, just try to get more runes in just these dungeons for this. I also highly recommend to farm this with a very safe team. It's way more important to go in with a safe team. Don't use this team, by the way, because this team I just use to clear it on manual just to get like the tower in, to get like the cooltime decrease, that kind of stuff. But definitely use something that's a very safe team. And I can talk more about like safe teams in another video. But if you happen to have a safe team and you happen to have like a super fast team, but that fails like a bunch of times, I highly recommend go for the safe team and then just put your phone on when you go to work. And like, even if this run, like a run of 30 takes you like 2 hours, even if it takes you like 4 hours, if you can't look at your phone for like 3-4 hours, that's the moment you probably want to do it. Or if you can't look at your phone for like an hour, you do that. So you go for like family dinner, you just put that on your phone and you don't have to look at your phone for another hour. Those are the kind of moments that I personally do my Illunia runs, and that just makes it very chill. So you feel like you're still farming, you're still doing something useful-ish in the game, but you don't have to look at your phone at all because it's the times 30. And because of that times 30, you don't have to look at your phone. The runs are like 2 minutes each. You're in like for like an hour and like 15 minutes. So it's definitely the way for me to get rid of my dimensional hole energy without spending too much time on it. So my recommendation of farming is Illunia. Afterwards, I would say Lumo is kind of okay-ish as well, but I would say it's either Illunia or it's Karazhan. So Illunia has the best drop table. Unless you really want to go for the Rage and Blades, then it's Karazhan having the best drop table. How to exactly farm them? Well, I would say that my alt is kind of on the point where you can't really farm that. Illunia is probably also the harder dungeon because you really need those specific, I would say, net force in wind to make it work. But I'll make a different video on that, how I recommend to get like with the low rune requirement all of these dungeons in, and I'll probably do that on the main, but just really low down the room requirements. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Hope that you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a thing or two, and that you're probably not just... I do see a lot of people that are just simply stacking out on dimensional hole energy, and they're like, yeah, I kind of don't really need another rogue, and then because I already have all of my rogues like max skilled and stuff, so I'm just kind of wasting my stuff. Don't waste this stuff. There's actually the highest room potentials that you can get in here are from this, and on screen I'm actually going to put a showcase between a maxed out rune that is from a normal one and then a maxed out rune, but that would be an ancient one. So you can compare like how much rune efficiency is the two difference between those two, and that's kind of the difference that you could get from dimensional energy. Sure, it's near impossible to get, but hey, it at least gives you a chance to get something crazy good if you get kind of lucky. Guys, thanks a lot for watching, and see you as always in the next one.